Now that he knew how to read and write, Lith kept practicing every day. His family considered him a genius, but he knew better. He hardly thought that memorizing 21 letters and 10 numbers was the stuff of genius. But this was the world he lived in. He took advantage that his father was open to teaching him, and asked Raz to carve him a ruler 19.7 inches long and 1.2 inches high. On the ruler's front, Raz engraved the entire alphabet, and on its back, he engraved all the numbers. It was Lith's clutch to do homework and not bother his parents anymore. Raz was still riding high on the fact that his son was a genius, that he didn't question the odd size that Lith requested for his ruler. He could have easily made it much thinner and shorter, making it easier to carry around. But Lith was adamant in his petition and begged his father to fulfill his wish. The main reason Lith wanted a ruler so big was that he was aware that Orpal's hostility towards him had increased after everyone had started calling him a genius. For that reason, he had to be sure that the ruler was not easy to break or small enough to go missing. And the ruler was also the perfect object to always carry around something he could practice spirit magic on. When the storm finally subsided, Elina decided that it was the perfect time for Tista to get a checkup from Nana, because no matter how much effort Raz or Orpal put into the house's maintenance, the cold always managed to get in. This made Tista have coughing fits, and made Elina worried about her. So, she took the mule cart and brought Tista and Lith to the village. The time was not ideal because the winter had lasted too long, and the work at the farm had accumulated, so it needed all the hands it could get before another frost wave arrived. But since Lith was too small to help or be left at home alone, Elina decided to bring him with her and Tista. After bundling them up with the warmest clothes they had, Elina put them in the cart and the trip began. Lith was ecstatic. It was the first time he could see the world outside the farm, and he wanted to experience and learn as much as possible. However, the road was not smooth. More than once, they were bothered by stray graiths, wasp-like insects with a venomous sting at the end of their abdomen. Compared to the wasps from Earth, they had more hair and were blue instead of yellow.
"Why in the Great Mother's name are they still around?" Elina complained. "They are supposed to hibernate during the winter."
One graith was particularly stubborn, and despite their best efforts to chase it away, it kept coming back until it got dangerously close to Tista. Lith slammed his hands trying to kill it, but he missed. His body was still clumsy, but his spirit magic wasn't. He was now able to expand its range to 32 feet around him, and he used it to squash the graith effortlessly. Lith showed them the dead insect with pride.
"Don't worry, big sister. I'll always protect you."
Tista hugged him, and she was curious about the dead bug, but Elina was still worried about the venom, so they threw it out and resumed the trip. When the village of Lutia was in sight, Lith had a better picture of his new world. It wasn't just his family and his farm. The whole village reminded him of those early middle-aged drawings he had seen in history books. There were no signs of any complex technology or scientific development. They didn't even have something as basic and rudimentary as a windmill. When Lith asked his mother about the village, she explained that only artisans, scholars, and merchants live in it. The rest of the population lived on their own farms tending to fields and raising livestock. The village consisted mainly of a few dozen 1 or 2 stories high houses made of wood. There were no houses made of stone or bricks. Paved roads were also non-existent. All the roads between the houses were exactly like the one they'd been on, just dirt and mud. Lith read some of the signs outside the houses. He spotted a blacksmith, a tavern, and a tailor shop. The bakery, on the other hand, didn't need any kind of signs. The delicious smell that came out of its chimney was enough to make its presence known and make every passerby's mouth watery. Lith's stomach growled because of the smell from the bakery, and he realized how hungry he was. He also knew that he was going to dream about cakes that night. When they arrived at Nana's house, Lith noticed with surprise that it was bigger than theirs, even though Elina had told him that Nana lived alone. It was clear then to Lith that either Nana came from a rich family, or, and this was more likely, that healing was a very lucrative business. He decided that he needed to focus on mastering light magic as soon as possible. The main door was open, and once inside, Lith recognized the familiar feeling of an Earth doctor's waiting room. The door led to a single big room that smelled of herbs and incense. To the left, there was another door that probably led to Nana's living quarters. To the right, there was a big, wide curtain. Behind it, Nana was treating a patient. The rest of the space was filled with benches and chairs, most of which were already taken. Many families had decided to take advantage of the good weather and get a checkup. Elina removed the extra layers of clothing from her children and instructed them to sit still and don't disturb the rest. The waiting room was filled with other mothers, so Elina joined in and they soon were all talking about their experiences and offering advice to each other. Taking advantage of his mother's absence, Lith wandered undisturbed through the house. The room was bare and uninteresting, but once he got closer to the curtain, he discovered a treasure. Inside a small open cabinet, he found many books about magic. Many of the book titles were specific about an element and its applications, but one book in particular caught his eye. Its title was The Basics of Magic. So, after checking that no one was looking, he grabbed it. Better to beg forgiveness than ask for permission, he thought. Besides, what could they possibly do to a 3-year-old? He moved into a corner with his back to the curtain, hoping he would go unnoticed as long as possible. He opened the book and started reading. It was clearly aimed at beginners, so he skipped the introduction and went straight to the elements' descriptions. Lith discovered that water magic was not just about conjuring and manipulating water. It also allowed the user to lower the temperature of any object. Any capable magic apprentice was supposed to be able to create ice, which could be used as a tool to defend or attack. Air magic had also some considerations that he hadn't known before. For example, when using it to its full extent, one was able to control the weather. And at its most basic level, one could use it to create lightning. Fire and earth didn't have any hidden secrets, and he already knew everything there was to know about them, so he moved along. The more he kept reading, the more Lith realized that even though the author knew about magic, he didn't know much about human anatomy. For example, the book would emphasize the importance of keeping a wound clean, but it didn't go into detail on how to keep it clean, and words like disinfection or sepsis were nowhere to be found. Lith was also surprised to see that both light and dark magic were included in the same chapter instead of separate ones. According to the book, both elements were the most important tools of any healer. It said that dark magic could be used as a weapon, but it didn't explain how. The book's author was also very clear in pointing out the fact that he was not a fighter, and that beginners should not try complicated spells. The book also explained that dark magic was not good or bad, just a magic element like all the others. It was also a very important tool for a healer because it allowed them to clean wounds and tools, and even fumigate houses to get rid of rats and insects. That way, they were able to stop the spread of disease. Dark magic was also the only way to eliminate parasites that had grown inside a patient. Light magic allowed the healer to locate them, but it wasn't able to attack or get rid of them. That's when dark magic would come to the rescue. Light and dark magic worked best when they were used together. Light magic's greatest strength was to perceive life forces and scan them to detect any anomalies. It also corrected such anomalies and guaranteed instant recoveries from most diseases. However, more complicated matters, like restoring broken bones, were explained in another chapter. The more Lith read, the more ignorant and stupid he felt. He could have discovered most of this information earlier if he hadn't been biased and superstitious. I'm such an idiot. I have lived these past 3 years thinking that this world was like a video game with fixed rules and levels. That darkness is evil and light is holy. But this is science, the same I've studied all my life, he thought. He continued, if fire magic is converting energy into heat, then water magic is nothing more than making cold energy, condensing the water in the atmosphere, and turning it into a liquid state. It all seemed like a Columbus's egg, but it's all really obvious and simple. He was about to turn the page and start the chapter about healing broken bones when he felt a firm hand on his shoulder.
That's not a toy, young man,
Nana's voice said from behind.
I really hope you didn't damage it, or your family will have to pay for it. And let me tell you, it won't be cheap.